and welcome to Your Sparkly Brand. We are here to inspire and empower female entrepreneurs just like you. This podcast is all about delivering no fluff, high value content that helps you to grow your business. It doesn't matter if you have no budget and are still DIYing everything on your own. We're giving you the tips, tools, and strategies that you need to build a sparkly empire. I'm Megan Gersh. I'm a brand designer and web designer, and I'm here with my co-host and copywriting queen, Lauren Tassi.
Hi, Meg. How's it going?
Doing really great. How are you? I'm feeling very rested after this break.
Yeah. This is our first episode back in the new year, and I think we're both like so full of energy and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today. We have with us Renae Fieck. She's a mom of 3 and an occupational therapist. She helps women optimize their time and energy by unlocking the power of their cycles so they can be thriving high achievers. Through her method, she helps women balance the demands of life, make a bigger impact, and get bigger results without adding more stress or needing more time. She's also the host of the Cycle Advantage podcast. Welcome to Your Sparkly Brand, Renae.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So, Renae, before we jump into your story, we like to start off the podcast by sharing what we call our sparkly moment of the week. So this is just like a little win or something that we wanted to celebrate that happened in our week. So something that made you feel like a little bit good and sparkly. So Lauren, what was your sparkly moment?
So mine this week, you know how they always say like you're supposed to like look back at where you were, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and think about how you would think about your current self. I had like a moment yesterday morning. I was like, I got up early. I like scheduled a Pilates class. I was taking the dogs out and I was just like, I'm tired. And then I was like, wait, you have like the best life. Like you 3 years ago would be so jealous that you get to get up and you don't have to go to, work a corporate job and you get to go do whatever you want. So just don't be tired. That was my moment.
I love that so much. Yeah. I feel like just practicing that gratitude every day is so important too.
And Meg, do you have a sparkly moment?
Yeah, totally. So I went on a vacation to the Bahamas and we got back this past weekend, and I have just been really focusing on getting back into my morning routine, which I really, really enjoy. So that includes taking the dog for a walk, doing a little bit of meditation, doing affirmations, drinking my water, all of that kind of good stuff that you're supposed to do in the morning. And that has just felt really good to like get back into that groove. So that's my little sparkly moment of the week. And Renae, do you have a sparkly moment that you want to share?
Yesterday was my kid's first day back at school after Christmas and the COVID quarantine that we have. And it was unexpected. The school called me at like 7:00 in the morning and said, you can bring them by and get them tested this morning at school, and then they can go to school if they're negative. So it was just this really beautiful day yesterday. I felt really good. I had a full packed day and I was planning on how I was going to coordinate that with kids being home on quarantine. And then to have them there, it just felt really refreshing and really relaxing. So it's allowed me to take some space in the last couple of days to when I have breaks between interviews or whatever, I can go sit outside and just relax. So it's been really nice.
Oh yeah. I'm sure that just like, you just feel so spacious having, a little bit of time to yourself.
Yes. After having, what was it? It's been since the 22nd or 20th or whatever it was that they've been home with me like full time because we had Christmas and then got quarantined. So anyway, yeah, it's been a long time.
All right. So let's get into it. Renae, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey? How did you come to start your business?
Yeah, so I started my business about 5 years ago. My husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor at around the same time that I got pregnant with our 3rd baby. And so we had this massive, year of what do we really want life to look like? And you only live once and you're never guaranteed tomorrow. So what is that going to look like? And so that was the point that I realized I wanted to create something of my own and have more freedom than working a really like a regular 9-to-5 job. And so I started an MLM, like network marketing company that was really geared towards a lot of personal development. So that was kind of my first stepping stone into personal development. But a couple years into it, realized I was really frustrated with the MLM network marketing sort of space and branched out into something of my own. And at the time, it was just like feeling out anything I could possibly try and get into, and started dabbling with helping coach moms who were just overwhelmed, and then went to decluttering, and then back to helping moms who were overwhelmed. And over the whole course of the time, I had this like seeded thread throughout the whole thing, really in my own life, using my cycle and aligning my life with my cycle. And so once I started sharing that inside some of my programs, people were like, why are people not talking about this? This is what we need. We need more of this. And so in the last year, it's been this transition of really helping in that space and helping women embrace their cycle in their lives and and in their businesses, and really just increasing and amplifying their productivity and their time and their energy and all of these things really geared around your cycle.
That's awesome. So can you talk a bit about like what exactly cycle syncing is?
Yeah. So cycle syncing is kind of just in this basic kind of look of looking at your cycle as more than just 4 to 7 days of bleeding in the month, that your cycle is actually much more than that. You have estrogen and progesterone that have this intricate play throughout the month that are making different, LH and FSH, and you're ovulating and like all of these things that are going on inside your body that you don't even realize is happening. And yet each of those different components have different impacts on how much energy you have, or how much you feel like you can focus, or how much your creativity, all of those different pieces. And so when we say that word cycle syncing, it means I'm matching my life up with where my body's naturally at. I'm trusting my body and knowing that my body is in a certain place at a certain time. I'm organizing the things that are on my to-do list or what I'm doing to match up with that. And so what happens is that your body is in a little bit more of an alignment. It feels more rhythmic. It feels like things flow a little bit easier. You reduce that stress hormone and everything just kind of flows a little bit better.
I've been so fascinated by this whole cycle syncing thing. I read the Alyssa Vitti books last year at some point, and I was like, that was eye-opening to me. And I've just sort of been trying to implement this in my own life. But a lot of, her work talks much more about like the personal side of things and how to, plan your life around it, where I'm so interested to hear about like how to use cycle syncing in your business, as entrepreneurs, like, we're being able to like maintain our energy when we need it, when we need, to give a presentation or this kind of thing. So what are some tips you'd give to women who are just starting to learn about like cycle syncing in business?
Yeah. Well, the first part is going to be about learning how it impacts your body, right? Like your personal self and that awareness, which I think is the first step. Most women are not even really aware of what's happening with their body. It's like this dread, like when a coaching call I had this morning, all the women were like, it's this dreaded time of the month. It's this thing that I wish I didn't have to deal with. And it comes with such negative connotation. So for the most part, women are seeing it as the one part of the month that we have to put up with or deal with, and then that's it. And so for the most women, that first step is going to be learning to listen to that, learning to listen to your body. Like you even said, knowing when you have good energy, because I'm sure we've all had those live trainings and that it's on the calendar and it's on the schedule, and 2 hours before you're like, I wish I did not have to do this right now. Like, I just don't feel it. My energy's not there. I'm not feeling. And then you feel like after the presentation or the training, you feel like that was crap. I didn't do a very good job. It wasn't my best stuff, and all of those types of pieces. And it doesn't, and a lot of women think it's unpredictable, like that it's just random, but it really does coincide with where you're at in your cycle. There's 4 distinct phases that I use inside my programs. And within those 4 phases, your first phase is your recharge phase. So that would be when you're actively bleeding. And that's the time I really encourage people to get off social media. So either having all your stuff scheduled out ahead of time or whatever you need, or maybe you just don't post at all for 3 days and you stay off of there, because that's when you are the most in tune with what is best for you. So some cultures and like Native American tribes and stuff talk about like that's when your subconscious and your conscious like separation is merged. So you're the most in tune with discovering those big ideas and those big thoughts and like trusting what's good for you and your business and going forward. And then after that first 3 days is your planning phase. So you mapping out your whole month, like what's coming, what trainings do I have to do, when am I going to get stuff done, how am I going to do it, all of that type of stuff. And then you hit your accelerate phase. And your accelerate phase comes with that estrogen dominant. A lot of women really like this phase because you feel really good. You feel super productive. You feel like you're checking off that to-do list. Everything's feeling done. Everything's feeling really good. You look down, you're like, wow, how did I get through all of that? I love it. Feels great. And then you enter into your connect phase. And your connect phase is when you wouldn't typically be ovulating. So you're the most magnetic and the most radiant. It's the time when you would want to schedule those live trainings or presentations or interviews or things like that, because you are going to be the most engaging. You're going to communicate the most effectively. You would want to do your photo shoots or buy new clothes or get your hair done, like all of that type of stuff in that phase. And then you enter into your reflect phase. And your reflect phase is what people oftentimes coin as your PMS phase. But in that phase, it has your highest levels of emotion, your deep ability to connect with your audience in the sense of those emotional pieces. So it's your prime time to actually write content and to write all of your stuff together and, organize and get stuff put together so that you're ready for the next month. It does have that high sort of energy of like getting stuff done in the sense of admin type of stuff. Like I clean off my desk, clean out my email inbox, like all of those types of things in that reflect phase. But it's a lot of that inward sort of productivity versus the live trainings or the getting big projects moving or all of those types of things. So, and then the cycle starts over. So really, when you look at it in terms of your business, you can schedule as much as possible. It doesn't have to be 100% to really feel the benefits of this, but you can start to schedule in those trainings or blocking out the week when you know your energy is going to be really low and you don't take on extra podcast interviews that week, or you spend like this week is more getting into my connect phase. And so I'm going to spend the next few days recording all of my reels and recording all of those live trainings, anything I can do this week, because I know that that's when my phase is optimized for that. And then next phase is about writing. So then that's when I would write all the content to go with all of those videos or with all of those things that I created. And then when I hit that accelerate phase, that's when I schedule it and get it all in. So it really gives like this idea of like batching on steroids, because you're batching not just because it's a batch or it's a time block, but you're batching and blocking based on what your energy and what your body's going to feel like in those zones.
This is so interesting to me. And I feel like not enough people are talking about this either. And as a person who's like really visual, I would love to see some kind of like visual representation of like, do this then, and then you move here, and then like to see like how it actually all fits together. Super, super interesting to me. But as past just getting these things like on a calendar, on a schedule, what are some like issues that come up? So like, what are some problems that you see people run into when they start to try to implement these strategies?
I think the big one is that people feel like everything has to match up, right? So when you're like, well, how do I have clients? I do weekly calls with my clients. Like I can't move those. And so then there's this disconnect and feeling frustrated that not everything can match up. And I've seen some people estimate that roughly, even if you're able to only align 10% of your calendar to your cycle, you'll feel and notice that difference. And so that's a big one, is people feeling frustrated with that. The other thing in terms of that, even speaking to that, is people that are maybe working a 9-to-5 job and maybe building their side hustle or whatever, like feeling like there's time constraints that they don't get to choose what goes on their calendar when, can feel like I can't do this. This doesn't work for me. And to that, I found like working with clients, even outside of those 9-to-5 constraints or working outside of a scheduling snafu that you can't control, you're looking at your self-care, looking at what you're doing in terms of your mindset work. What are you doing in terms of exercise? What are you doing in terms of all of those other pieces? Are you making sure that you're connecting with your family and friends in those times when you're in that connect phase, so that you're getting that cup filled in those different zones? Because those 4 different phases, I really feel like those are what we need as human beings, right? Like we need connection with people. We need to feel like we have high productivity and a sense of purpose and that we're producing good work. We need recharge, and we need that connection to ourselves or to spirit and God or whatever. And so we need all 4 of those different phases in order for us to feel balanced. So whether or not that's how you're aligning your business and your work, or if that's just what you're doing outside of your work in your self-care and how you live in your life in those ways, I really feel like this is the way we were designed to live. And like you said, nobody's talking about it. Like, how as women do we have this monthly cycle and everybody kind of brushes it under the rug of like, we just don't talk about that, it doesn't impact us, when really it has vast impact.
Okay, so I have a question. What if you don't have a regular cycle for whatever reason? Maybe it's menopause, maybe you're pregnant, maybe you've got struggling with some other issues. How does this still work? Is yours different? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think even going back to that idea of like, this is how we were designed to operate in those 4 phases, even if we don't have a cycle, when we can live our life in accordance with those cycles, it helps. We feel we have some rhythm. We feel like we're not on this daily hamster wheel of like the same thing over and over and over again, but that there's like this predictable pattern. And so that really helps. So for women who have an irregular cycle, that oftentimes using these lifestyle habits and like changes actually can help regulate the cycle, right? Because sometimes, not always, but a lot of times women's cycles are really irregular because cortisol is really high. Their stress hormone, right? And so when stress hormone is really high, because they're hustling, they're grinding, they're pushing, they're staying up late, they're not eating very well, they're exercising really hard, or whatever it might be, they're pushing really hard, so that stress hormone's really high. And when the cortisol is really high, it puts you into fight or flight. And when your body's in fight or flight, it shuts off the normal production of all of the other functions of your body. So things like digestion, metabolism, your fertility, your ability to think clearly, brain fog, like all of those other things are impacted by that cortisol. So when we can help use this natural rhythm to bring that cortisol level down, then some of the other pieces start to work a little bit better. And then your cycle starts to regulate a little bit normally. So barring that there's like a medical something or other going on, when it's just the irregularity, because of that, it can make a huge impact to just start imposing these. So you kind of pick and find like, you know what, right now I kind of feel like I'm a little bit more aligned towards connecting with my family or connecting with other people. And so you kind of take those 4 phases and superimpose them on your calendar and then start intentionally living in accordance with them, and you will start to notice that cycle start to regulate. If you have no cycle or postpartum, pregnant, those types of things, you still have the same 4 phases. And so I like to use the moon as an external guide, just to have that like, hey, this is the moon's a full moon, so this is where I'm at in my cycle. And using that is just an external piece to help, same thing, lay those 4 phases into your life. And then that helps create this balance. It helps create this flow. Instead of that, like I said, that hustle and grind every day, same wheel, same hamster wheel sort of feel. So I still 100% believe it's applicable for all women, postmenopausal, pregnant, whatever. It just looks a little bit different in the actual implementation of it.
Interesting. And then another thing I wanted to ask you about is in terms of like I use an app to track my period. So I can, that's, how I can tell what phase I'm in. Are there any other tools? Is there any other, what else would you recommend for somebody who wants to go a little deeper into this, especially as it relates to business?
Yeah. So an app is really great if it gives you those extra layers of being able to track other things other than just like, hey, I'm bleeding these 4 days. So some apps are a little bit better than others to, being able to, like I have a client, she's like, I can predict when my cycle is going to happen. Like in the app, it knows exactly when I'm going to get a headache. It knows when I'm going to get a cramps. It knows when I'm going to feel tenderness. Like it has all of the stuff because she's been tracking it so well. But a lot of the apps only give you those physical sorts of components, right? Like whether or not you had high energy, low energy, or those like how your body is actually manifesting. So I really like using a paper tracker, and I'd be happy. I have one that you guys can share with your audience that people can go and download. But really in that tracker gives you an idea. You can like jot in like today felt really like brain fog. I couldn't think clearly, or today felt this. And you'll have to do a little bit more of the back end work to notice when those patterns and those cycles are. But I think sometimes visually when you see it all on a piece of paper versus in the app where it's all just cataloged, sometimes you can see those patterns come out easier than when they're in the app. But either way, like regardless, I think that's the first step, right? Is just if tracking in an app is the easiest way for you to track right now, like I say, start there. Like don't necessarily feel like you have to overcomplicate it. If you want to go deeper and dive deeper into really noticing some of these other patterns, then you can dive deeper into that. But do what's going to make it feel like I can do this right now and not feel overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked about that, because that was going to be my question as well. Like, how do I do it? Like, I feel like a paper planner seems appealing to me, but like I usually take those kinds of assets and like dump it into like a notes type thing on my phone. So that way, like I know that I'm always going to have my phone around. So like, if I'm going around a coffee shop or whatever, I just want to make sure that I have it at hand. But yeah, those are really, really good tips. So let's talk a bit about too, like when you were first getting into this and when you first were kind of diving into this area of work, like what is one mindset shift that you had in your business that like really helped you kind of like take your business to the next level?
Yeah. Well, I think that looking at in particular, like with the cycle, I feel like there's one week of the month month, almost every single month, where I want to burn my business down. Like there's these times where you get so excited, you have these big goals, you know what, you feel super accomplished, you feel confident, you feel great. And then it's like, I can't do this. What the heck am I doing? Like, why do I, it's just so much easier if I gave up, walked away and did my 9-to-5 job. I love my 9-to-5 job. Like I'll just stay there. Right. And so when I started looking at the cycle piece, noticing that there was this rhythm of every month, there was this 1 week where those thoughts and things crept in, that it really helped shift it to this place of, this is not who I am. I'm not a horrible mom. I'm not failing at my life and my business and work and everything at the same time. It's just a feeling that I'm having right now. And so it really helped take away that identity of like, this is who I am versus this is just what I'm feeling. And I think that was a huge shift for me in realizing that those thoughts that come up are normal. They're part of the process. They're part of the cycle. So allowing them to come up, feel them, and then honor them and say, how can I use them and leverage them and know that this is just how, like where I'm at in my cycle, right? It's not that I am really truly showing up as a crap person in every area of my life. It's just the feeling. And so I think that was a huge shift for me. And it's been a huge shift for me, even in terms of like how I carry this forward. This legacy is a legacy to my daughter in helping her identify these patterns too. She's 10 years old. She's not quite cycling yet, but we can see those normal patterns of helping her realize like when I'm feeling these really anxious or depressing or overwhelming thoughts of like the world is going to cave in, that they're not who you are. It's just a feeling that you're having right now because of where your body's at. And know that, let them be okay, their feelings, but know that in a few weeks from now, you're going to feel great and you're going to feel wonderful again. And so it's not this identity piece. And the identity, I think, is where we start to spiral. And then that keeps us limited versus when we keep our identity where we want it to be and that those feelings are just fleeting pieces of life, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think so on the podcast, we talk about this a whole bunch about like every entrepreneur that I've talked to goes through like these phases of like, you know, like you think you're the best in the world, then you think you're like, oh, like, what am I doing? You have a bunch of imposter syndrome or, you know, whatever. And it really does take that persistence of like riding those waves. And like now understanding this and like, I'm hoping that folks that are listening to this will be able to add like one more layer to that kind of mindset where you can kind of ride those waves like as they come.
Yeah, because it's like we have these cycle, right? And when I draw out our cycle, I draw it as like this upward spiral. So it may seem like every month we're just going through the same 4 phases, but every month we're layering those 4 phases on the things that we learned the previous month. So if we're actually fully embracing each of those, every single month we're raising up in this upward spiral. It's not just this stagnant circle that we're going around over and over and over again, that each time we go up, like each time we experience that accelerate phase, you're going to be more productive and faster and think clearly and or even just stepping up from where you were in that cycle the previous month.
Are there any other like books or resources that you would like recommend to listeners if they're trying to dive a little bit deeper on this?
Yeah. Well, so my podcast is the Cycle Advantage podcast. So inside that podcast will go all deep in those sorts of areas. I'm trying to think of other books. I know Kate Northrup has a book called Do Less, and she talks about the cycle and things like that in there. And I know that's a big part of how she functions and uses her life too. But I feel like the book talks a lot of other things as well. But it's a good book. I would recommend it. I know Elisa Vidi? I think it's Vidi. I have not read her book, but I think her book is the other big known book kind of in this area of topic. There's not a lot of resources out there. So what you do find is going to talk much about the biology of like what the body is actually doing. There's a lot more research out there and information in terms of exercise or nutrition. You might find some stuff out there in terms of like, they call it seed cycling. So different seeds and things, different herbs you could use throughout the different phases of the cycle. But in terms of productivity and time and how you actually use that in your business, there's not a lot, unfortunately. unfortunately. So maybe my podcast would be the best place to go.
I think that's definitely the answer. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes and also the tracker you mentioned.
So let's talk about, like, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger business self, what would you say to that person?
Younger business self. I feel like when you start out in business, you have no idea what you're doing. You have this big dream and you have this big goal, and you know it's going to be harder than everybody makes it look and seem. I wish, and this isn't really what I would tell her, but I wish that there was some way I could impose the confidence and the resilience that I have today on that person that I was then. I know that's not quite what you asked, but I feel like that confidence and that resilience, the ability to continue to get back up and to put yourself out there, if I had learned those lessons, and I feel like even now, if I could step into my future version of who I want to be and that confidence and resilience today, I feel like those are the two biggest things that have made the biggest difference.
And so what are you working on? What upcoming projects are you excited about?
Our podcast just relaunched in January. So we have that came out January 17th, all rebranded around the Cycle Advantage. We are opening the doors to our new program in February. February 10th will be the start of our live training. And we'll go dive deeper into this, really helping women step into that place of really being able to embrace their cycle and optimize that. Right now, we have our founding members running through it and getting some amazing results and just seeing them be blown away with embracing this new cycle story for their own lives. And so that's pretty much the big thing that I'm working on this year.
Awesome. And where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah. So like we talked about, the podcast is probably the best place to find me. I love hanging out there. So that's the Cycle Advantage podcast. And then on Instagram would be my second best place to love hanging out. And that's just at Renae Fieck over on Instagram.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Renae, for joining us on the podcast. And thank you guys so much for listening. So if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And until next time, stay sparkly.